Lay down. Good boy. Good boy. All right, folks. I'm going to share my first build. The story of my first build. Happened about a decade ago. I was about 25 years old. I was in the military. And it was a self-educated process, but it was also the foundation of why this car is what it is today. Okay. If I didn't build that build, I probably would have went in a different direction, but it is what it is. But probably the best situation. Probably one of the coolest builds I've ever done in my life. All right, so there it is. That's my 1985 Chevy S10. It was a single cab, long bed, 4-cylinder, automatic transmission, 2-wheel drive. I paid about $1,000 for this thing, and it was a huge piece of crap. But even though that thing was a big piece of crap, it was absolutely rust-free. The thing about this truck is that I never even expected to keep it. I bought it as a beater. I never thought it'd ever be a project or whatever. It just turned into a fun truck. I had so many adventures in this thing. I ended up just falling in love with it, and I just ended up keeping it. All right, so here's a couple of clips of some of the stupid things I used to do in this truck. And unfortunately, I never really cared about having a fancy phone at the time. This was about a decade ago, so some of these videos are kind of pixelated, and you guys got to understand that I was a kid when I did this, and I was kind of stupid, so I don't know. Either way, here's the clips. There's some good water. And it's up to almost the top of my truck. Yeah, look at that. Yep, just cruising along. Just cruising along. Yep. Yep. Very nice. Very nice. Yep. Yeah, here we go. Da da da. Woo. Oh God, I just pissed that guy off. Whip your shitty, guys. Guys, look at him. My ass, dude.
Okay, drop it. Now pick it up again.
Why?
1, 2, 3. Stop. Yeah. Seriously, good shit out, bitch.
Alright, so I'm sure you guys see where I'm going with this. I had nothing but good memories in this truck. It was so fun. It never broke. I could fix it with duct tape, rubber bands, paper clips, whatever. It was super reliable. And honestly, this truck showed me the way. This truck showed me that you don't need a pretty car. Ugly and reliable is the way to go. And I ended up officially turning it into a project. So I went out and I bought this motor and trans as an LT1 and a Tremec 6-speed out of a 1997 Pontiac Trans Am WS6, and I paid $1,500 for this thing. And I got $1,000 in the truck, so honestly, who cares? That's $2,500, in a project truck. All right, so when I bought this motor and transmission, I was actually living in an apartment complex at the time, and I had no clue what to do with it. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to put this motor in because I've never attempted an engine swap like that. But either way, anybody who watches my channel, they all know I don't care where I work on a car. So I ended up cleaning up this motor and transmission in the apartment complex parking lot. All right, so after I got the motor and transmission cleaned up and I put it in a storage unit, I ended up making plans to move into a townhouse with a 2-car garage, and that was perfect because that gave me a spot to actually put this all together. But one of the things I actually did do before I moved out of the apartment complex is I found a clutch pedal for the exact same year truck, and I installed that in the parking lot as well. All right, so a couple months go by, and I end up getting settled into this townhouse, and I finally get to rip apart the truck. And it was pretty standard. It's a small motor. It comes out pretty easy. And here's actually something I want to say about the whole LT1 thing that I'm getting ready to put in, because a lot of people are like, man, why did you put an LT1 in this thing? Like, why didn't you go with an LS? And honestly, that was the whole reason why I got the motor and trans so cheap, is the dude actually told me, he's like, hey, I'm actually selling this as a transmission. The motor's just kind of like a, hey, here you go. Because nobody wanted them. Everyone wants an LS. The thing about the LT1 is that it's still basically a regular 350. So parts were cheap. When it comes to headers, they're like $200. When it comes to motor mounts, $100. It made everything extremely cheap to throw this thing together. And I would have went with a regular 350, like a carbureted deal, but I wanted decent fuel mileage. So I figured with the fuel injection, it would actually get decent gas mileage. And it did. It really did. I think it got like 25 miles a gallon, and it was pretty legit. Either way, I ended up talking to a bunch of old people when they used to run these things back in the 90s, and almost every single one of them said, dude, I could not kill that thing. It was a pretty good motor. They said it leaked a lot of oil, but they couldn't kill it, and I thought that was awesome. So as far as actually installing the motor, it really wasn't that bad. I was able to use the original F-body oil pan, and then I also did have to kind of beat the crap out of the firewall a little bit for it to clear the bell housing of the motor, but it was a pretty standard installation, not much to it. However, when it comes to the core support, I did have to hog it out, and I hear this is kind of a standard thing on S10 V8 swaps. You could either mount them on the very front of the core support, or you can hog them out and then shove the radiator as far forward as you possibly can to make room for the motor. All right, so the second thing that was kind of interesting that I had to do to make this all work in regards to the transmission is I had to modify the cross member to mate up to the transmission, and then I had to make a plate that goes behind the brake booster that would actually hold the hydraulic cylinder for the clutch pedal. And this was something I actually had to research and figure it out, and it kind of turned out looking like something you'd see out of the Flintstones. It looks like crap, but honestly, it worked just fine. The reason why it looks like crap is because I just didn't have the right tools to do the job, but honestly, who cares? It's a junk truck. It's a cheap truck. It worked. All right, so after I got the minor fabrication stuff out of the way, I end up going ahead and I assemble the front of the motor and put all the pulleys on it and stuff like that. And then I work into electrical, which I can't remember where I got this harness from, but the unfortunate thing about this harness is that it basically downgraded it from OBD2 to OBD1, and it ran the engine like a 94, 95, which that stinks, but it still ran good. Unless I go ahead and I dig deep into ancient technology to try to program this thing, there's really not much I can do with it. So that was the downside, but it fired right up. All right, so after I got this thing running, I did putz it around for a couple of weeks, and I got the necessaries done on it. I got an alignment done for the added weight from the motor, and then I got an exhaust put on it. And there was a few things that I started throwing at it here and there as time went by, and I ended up finding this hood for $80, and it was in the boneyard. And I remember getting so many compliments on it because there was a lot of people that were saying, dude, that was a good find, because that's like a $500 hood brand new. And I was like, yeah, I know, it was awesome. And then I ended up doing a bunch of research on this rear end. It's out of an Eddie Bauer Ford Explorer, and it came with a 410, a limited slip, and disc brakes. And I got this thing for, $180. After that, I ended up getting a set of low-profile Caltrex bars, and these things are great. I will be putting these on the Beretta down the line. And also, I went with Willwood brakes, and I ended up getting these wheels. And these are actually recycled wheels, and guess where they came from? Yep, that's right. I ended up robbing the wheels off my pretty car. And the thing about this pretty car is that I ended up throwing so much money at this thing, and it was still slow. It didn't matter. I threw trick flow cylinder heads at this thing, all kinds of other parts, including these wheels. And I remember actually having a buddy drive my Mustang, and I drove my truck, and we raced each other multiple times. And my truck spanked that Mustang every single time, and it was just ridiculous. And you know what? I said, screw it. No, I'm going to pull the wheels off, and I'm going to put them on the truck. That's a better place for them anyway. So the only thing that was really good that came from that Mustang is my realization that pretty cars suck. All they are is expensive, and junk Chevy is where it's at. If you pull into a car meet with a pretty Mustang or a brand new Mustang, nobody cares. If you pull into a car meet with a junk Chevy that runs like a mad dog, people get excited and they start asking questions. And it is probably one of the coolest feelings I've ever had in my life. All right, folks, this was my short story on my very first build, and ultimately why the Beretta is what it is today. That S10 gave me so many good memories, so many fun memories, that I just couldn't help myself but to try to build something kind of like it. When this truck was a 4-cylinder, it was extremely fun. Never broke down. But when I installed that V8 and 6-speed transmission, it went from fun and turned it into an all-out riot. I will never forget this truck.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Oh, yeah.